Hey, folks, we are live. And unlike our other events, this is just me. So prepare for the worst Twitch stream you've ever seen in your life. We are at 2:00, and I'm going to be working a lot off of chat here. So you should see chat over here on the screen on the right. We'll be featuring messages as well. And let's see how this goes. This is just an impromptu event here to help the people who have been affected by the layoff that took place at ABK today, Xbox ABK. So there's Tia. Tia, thank you. We have an actual Twitch streamer in the house. So this will be like showing your fourth grade film project to Steven Spielberg for you, Tia. You're Steven Spielberg. I'm the fourth grader. P.S. We are going to work off of chat, and I'm going to invite people up. If you'd like to come up on stage on video, this is a great time to do that. We have chat open. I'm just going to play a little music as well. This is Restream's AI music, which is going to be interesting. We'll see how this goes. This might be fun. And we'll just kind of go from there. If you'd like to come on stage, we will absolutely do resumes. We can do Q&A. We can do really anything other than just John talking for no good reason for a while. I see we're at 2:01. We'll say this a few times just while everybody is sort of trickling in. We all know most calls don't actually even start until 5 minutes in, but for those that are already here, thank you for being here. For those that have been displaced today or are at risk of being displaced based upon the news today, just want to pause for a second and say you're not alone. This event today and the people that are in the audience is evidence of the fact that you're certainly not alone. And though this chapter is probably a dark one, it's not the last one, and we're all gonna get through this together. We're gonna keep bouncing back, no matter what the industry throws at us. We're gonna keep bouncing back, and yeah, there's that. We'll do another one of those here in a minute, and until then, we'll just say this: if you'd like to come up on stage, super happy to even in real time network people to folks that we know have opportunities. If you'd like to be introduced to a studio head or a recruiter right here live on camera, my network is your network. That's probably the most valuable thing that I can do here. I see already a number of people that are recruiters making comments from various sources, largely LinkedIn. Any recruiters, if y'all want to jump in here and come up on stage, please ping me and I will send you a link and we'll get you up here. Happy to share. In fact, eager to share this screen with as many people as possible. So come on up. Very excited to share that we do have some confirmed exciting guests joining tomorrow, including for a morning session to make sure that our friends in the EU are not left out. I see a Marie, and Marie, you are getting a text message in a moment here. Here we go. Ooh, okay, Restream. Okay, I hear that. That's pretty good. I'm not sure if it matches with the tone of our call today, but I'll take it. It's not terrible. Tia, I now understand what it's probably like for you as a Twitch streamer. You're like sitting in the room by yourself, and you're like, I apparently people are listening. Apparently there's somebody there because there's chat. But there's that. Awesome. We have a Jaleesa Eliason who may be joining us as well. So that'll be the two founders of Game Talk Unlocked. Holy schmoly. That would be incredible. Okay. I'm just going to open this event up on LinkedIn as well so we can see if there's any questions coming through there too. While we're getting rolling here, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to start dropping them into chat. This might actually be a wonderful way for us to inspire others who might be sitting in the audience saying, oh, I wish I knew how I could get involved, and maybe have a reason to jump up on stage and help. anybody who maybe doesn't love being on camera or enjoy the sound of your own voice as much as I clearly enjoy the sound of my own voice, please feel free to use chat to share resources, links, thoughts, any of the above. I want to thank a number of the people who are in the audience right now, including Tim Wood, who just happens to be the person who I see right there, who already shared a really amazing resource, an actual written, I believe this is a PDF, right, Tim? Let me pull that up here. Yeah, a networking guide from an experienced recruiter, which is really great. If anybody would like to have that, please ping me on LinkedIn, and I've got it ready to share with you as we speak. Yep, Tia, you ain't playing. It is definitely a wild ride, but this is fun. This is fun. At least from this side, because the music's so good. Okay, text questions. All right, let's see here. Oh, what do we have here? We've got Marie Ablaza.
Hello. Am I on?
Hello. Here, let's see here. There we go. Boom. We got both of us and we got chat. There we go. Look at this.
Everybody.
Wow. This looks way more professional than anything anyone's going to get on this call, just to be perfectly transparent. Restream is setting high expectations. Marie, thank you for being here. We're joined by our very own fairy job mother. Thank you for being here, Marie.
Thank you for having me. I was listening in and I want to share the same empathy that you shared. You know, it's a wild ride, and the news this morning has been really, really sad. I think it's really sad. Like, I think we were talking, John, yesterday, you know, like I feel like I wear a lot of hats, you know, like I look at these layoffs and I think about it from like a recruiter perspective, where I'm like, how do I help get everybody back on their feet and, you know, get to their new thing and their new job. And then I also feel like I'm a therapist because I have personal friends who are affected that are calling and texting and wanting to just vent and sit and talk. And I'm doing that. And yeah, and I just feel like, you know, it's hard to like stretch myself out because I'm like, how do I, you know, help everybody? But I'm glad that we're doing this. I think at the end of the day, like, you know, it really is just about the community that we bring together, because, you know, I'm just one person. I'm not going to be able to help everyone. That's the reality. But I think coming together to do this and making this space and seeing who are the champions who are, you know, pushing for better things ahead, that's how this industry gets stronger. So I'm also battling like the start of a cold. It sucks.
Oh, no.
So
Uh-oh.
I know.
Anybody here who has kids knows that you're either beginning or ending a cold at any given time when you've got a little one or multiple in your home. You know, Maria, you know, so elegantly phrased as always, but it really, I think, calls to mind, you know, the image to me of like a phalanx of, you know, shields held together can resist almost any force. The movie 300 comes to mind immediately, of a group banding together, and really even the thousands can be fought back by the hundreds. And that maybe is a little bit of the story of what's going on right now. Corinne says, if we all stand together, we can encourage change for the future. That is so very true on so many different levels, Corinne. Thank you for mentioning that. From representation in our industry to taking a stand and showing that we are more than individuals. So beautifully said. Warrior mode activated, John. Tim, I don't have my armor on, but as a preview, actually here, a little bit of fun before we get started. Tim, I do have my sword that I promised that I would bring to our podcast. So join a podcast with Tim and I.
Wait, can I bring on my thing too?
Is it? I bet it's a lightsaber. Anybody want to take odds on the fact that this is a lightsaber? Oh, okay, it's a lightsaber.
Absolutely a lightsaber. It's my purple one, Mace Windu.
Oh yeah. Good old Mace. Good old Mace. Pausing for a moment now that we're about 10 minutes in, and we're really picking up speed on people joining. We're having a little bit of fun right here, which I hope is bringing a little bit of levity to some people on a difficult day. We're going to get into some heavy stuff. Again, now that we've got some folks here, I just want to pause and remind ourselves why this is happening right now. Today, approximately 1900, could be more, people found out that they are not going to have jobs. And they unfortunately join another 530 from earlier in this week, and 1800, and then a 400. And then the numbers are just, bigger than we would ever hope that they would be. One is too much. 4,750 or so is categorically too much. So first, let's humanize these numbers. It's easy to just keep saying these bigger and bigger numbers, 18,000, 20,000. It stops meaning something after a while, but it means a lot to every one of those, 1900 today. So I just want to pause and say, y'all, if you're here in this crowd today, wherever you are, if you're watching this on replay, I'll say for myself and many, many others, we're here for you. Resources that we have, time, network, knowledge, please reach out. It's the story we write together or we don't. So that's that. And we are joined by Marie, who's the fairy job mother, the most brilliant of all recruiters in the universe, I think is the official title.
Whoa.
That's full taken, right?
That is quite the no pressure.
Heavy swing. Okay.
Woo. No, thank you for having me. I do also want to say, like, as much as we are coming together for those who are impacted by recent layoffs, either that be, the last, what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the year, or 2023, or even beyond that. I do want to make a space for those people who have just been looking in general, whether whether it wasn't a layoff, those are people who have been pivoting, people who are looking for a career change, people who've, decided in the middle of 2020 and like the very anomaly type year that they wanted to, move and do something different. I really want to make a space for them too, because I will say this comes from personal conversations that I have with some friends. Some of the things that they are feeling is that, wow, there's all these incredible people that are going now into the market that have way more experience than me. And it just feels like I'm getting bumped down from a employability level. And that's really hard to hear because there's a little bit of truth in that, right? Like you do have some amazing people who are coming from big companies, really big names, but what about those other people who aren't, right? Like they don't have that, right? They don't have that advantage. But they're still struggling the same way, right? Like finding a job in this time, is really hard. So I just want to make a space for that because I feel like, I'm sure there's people in here too who are experiencing this a whole lot differently, right? Like they aren't in that 1900, 10,000 people that were laid off, right? Like these could be people from outside of the games industry, right? That are just, I just need a foot in anywhere. So I hope that there's space for that here, and I hope that, if there are people who are experiencing that, that this space does become, a place where you can shed those feelings and we can talk about it and we can uplift each other. And like you said, John, too, like let's humanize it, right? Like, yeah, these numbers are people that we know are coming from, big companies and, they are going to, have to be navigating this just like everybody else. But some people just don't have that advantage of like, being in well-known places and having that like on their resume that might like jump out to people versus, you know, other ones. So,
Yeah, boy. We're seeing so much validation coming through for what you're saying here, Marie. We got Natalie is mentioning it is super discouraging. It's balanced against some words of hope, saying that people are really glad that we're all coming together and talking like this. Corinne is also saying 100% I feel that. And it's really interesting too. there's a lot of conversation on LinkedIn, and I'll speak exclusively for myself. The only experience that I can refer to with confidence is my own. Having been part of and having gotten to be part of some really exciting, fun conversations about getting into this industry, feels funny sometimes because we're talking about getting in, and it's now feels sometimes it's like, hey, get in a line that seems to be just getting longer, right? We've all been in that line at Disneyland, or maybe not Disneyland. They run the line really, really well. And I better not talk trash about Disney with Marie
Disneyland's a
online,
place for sure.
right? Sometimes, but it can be super discouraging. And we're about to bring another special guest up right now, which will give me a good reason to make this comment short. One thing that I think is really worth dwelling on at times, especially in really, really challenging times like this, is this dandelion effect, where this industry has grown really fast, and all these great stuff popped up, big new changes to games, new IP, new studios, awesome stuff. And so there's all these dandelions in this field, and then all of a sudden things are getting shaken up a lot, and those seeds are now up in the air, and that's a lot of really brilliant talent. There is so much incredible stuff that's going to be made in the next couple of years that is reflective of our communities, that is so creative, that works with technologies like Web3 and blockchain and stuff that we haven't even started to see yet. And it's hard to get there. So for those that have been laid off or otherwise had a studio close, I really hope that you stay and you keep creating. And I hope that what we do here and in other small ways helps with that, in even the fractional of 1% sort of a style. Now, enough of that talking, because we've got our very own Jaleesa joining us as well.
Jaleesa!
Here, let's find the best format here.
What's up, girl?
Doing all right? Can you all hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Good. And for those of you watching, my name is Jaleesa. I am among the fallen, so I'm in the same boat as you. I was at Twitch, but let go 2 weeks ago. I was there 2.5 years as a creative producer, and So I commiserate. I'm commiserating with all of you, and I just want to echo everything John was saying. Even before I was laid off, there was such I don't know. I felt this pressure point that the whole industry was coming toward, and you have all this talent that's being ousted from their regular place of work, and now you have this pool of people, and we're at a pivotal juncture where the people, and Ben Cavallo says the same thing, where the people who never thought of themselves as a leader will step up as leaders in this moment. So that's you, whoever's watching. That can be you. I think we tend to put all of these companies that we've worked at. Sometimes we tend to put them on a pedestal, right? Because they're the giants of our industry. They're the ones that make the most known products or the most known games. But you forget that all of those places started with a person with an idea. They all started from the same place, and people really forget that. So I want to say that as a piece of encouragement for everybody who might not be sure of what to do next. And also, be gentle with yourself with the doom scrolling. If it's getting very overwhelming every time you go on LinkedIn, there's just like, me too, and feels like everyone's getting lit off, and your whole world seems to be crumbling. Like you could take a step back. You can disconnect from those things and be reminded that you have a life. You have family, friends, loved ones, people around you, and be surrounded by those people. And don't feel bad at all for just unplugging if you have to for like a week, a couple weeks. Sometimes that's what you need. So don't feel tempted, like you have to be like on LinkedIn all day, every day, or else nothing is going to happen. Like the opportunities will still be there, but just take a break, give yourself some grace,
Well said, Jaleesa. And it's so often that when these things happen, we can, especially if you happen to have what might be described as like a type A personality, you go right into problem solving, right? But here's the thing: more than one person between LinkedIn chat messages and chat here has mentioned that they are one of these people who've been impacted. Jaleesa, you are one of them, and it seems like that was now 4 layoffs ago, right? Which is crazy.
Yeah, it already feels like old news.
Right? Like, oh, wasn't that back in ye old week 3 of 2024? But here's the thing: there's shock. There's very real shock. You know, when this happens, when an unexpected job loss or big change like this happens. And so patience, we love that you brought that message, Lisa. Like, be patient with yourselves. If you need to take time to play some games, do that, right? Like, disconnect in so much as you need to. And also, if you go too hard in the paint, you could burn yourself out. And just being patient with yourself is big. That's easy to say, but there are people right now who are asking, how am I going to pay this rent? How am I going to feed these kids? And that's why we're doing this right here. So anybody who wants to. We do have another special guest joining us. You know him. You love him. His name is Ben Cavallo.
Ben! Hi, Ben.
For the devil.
Hello. Hi.
Oh, I miss you. I miss that face.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Ben, everybody, if you don't know him, you will eventually, because he is the CEO and founder of Midwest Games. One of, in my opinion, most exciting things happening in games right now, from an inclusive, exciting, innovative approach to game production. Thank you so much for being here, Ben, especially on a day where people could probably really use a show of support from executives in the industry.
Yeah, no, I mean, excited to be here. Excited, is that the best way to put it? Not excited to be here. Listen, it's a challenging moment. You know, we're seeing it just constant. You know, I try to, and I've tried to, with a couple posts lately, just like keep the hope alive. Like, some of it is just the continual residual and challenge of things going on. And I'm very hopeful with what the future lies. Like, that's why I'm creating my company, you know, to ultimately challenge it and to ultimately look at the next round of opportunities, because there can be a wave of growth that comes from this, but it's going to be tough at first. You know, and I've been jobless as well before. And I think what you were saying earlier around, like, have some patience with yourself. You know, you don't have to do everything all at once. You know, me, as someone with ADHD struggles with this. Like, I want to just immediately attack a problem and try to fix it. And, you know, and so it's good to like escape and use games, play games a bit. There's no good answer in this moment, but I think like engaging the community around you, knowing that there's people there to help support, and it will get figured out. Just believe in some of it. Like, there'll be struggle points, but you know, you'll find a path. We're problem solvers, all of us, and you figure out a way to solve the problem, and you just have to give yourself, you know, some patience with solving it. It doesn't immediately happen always. So.
So well said, Ben. And I think that for anyone who has been jobless, and I have been in that experience myself, it can feel distant when you're not there, and inescapable when you are. And so on our call today, my hope is that we have the ability to create and hopefully give a little bit of hope, to give some tactical information, like here's something to do right now, like buttons you can click. If anyone knows Camille, I hope that she's in the audience or watching this. She calls herself the clicky recruiter, because she talks about exactly what to do, like really specific tactical stuff, which is sometimes missing in conversations like this. It's all hope and strategy and not quite tactical. But then also maybe a little bit of strategy, like how to think about your now job search. One thing I would love to call out as a tactical and strategic piece, and we all talk about this a lot, but there's probably people here in the audience that haven't heard this. Whether you were laid off today, last week, or that's a possibility for you in the future, which literally describes every single person in the world, I strongly recommend going and getting involved with Amir Satvat's resources page now. The easy way to do that is to just look him up on LinkedIn. He's in the link to this event. it's the top thing on his page, and it literally is your ability to get free mentoring, free interview practice, free job board advice, free insights on this stuff, free basically one-on-one conversation, and it's happening all day, every day, hundreds of calls. So please get involved. The more of us that are there, the stronger we are. So that's something to do today, a year before you're laid off.
Well, I think that's a great point. Like, where ultimately, I know, like, in the moment that I didn't have a job, it's a reset moment. It kind of configures your view of the world, and your view of how you should approach it, and the priorities and things like that. And then also it tells you, like, building your personal brand, who you are, who you network with, who how you network. This is all a long-term thing. That's why I often say, like, it's your piggy bank. Like, put more in than you take out. It always pays you off in the end if you're always putting more in. And this is a great opportunity to network with many folks that are in the same boat as you. And some of them might find a job, and they might be like, oh yeah, and this other person, like, there's another role. And so, use this opportunity to really network. You're going to get so much empathy and community around it, because there's so many folks that are experiencing this similar thing, that this is a great moment to really build strong bonds, and build bridges that can really help you throughout your entire career. Like, my whole career in games has been built off of strong bridges with people that have happened over time, and suddenly they, down the line, they come back into my life and help again in some way. And so all of that is really important to maintain, and build. And this is a building moment.
So jumping in, because no one's going to be able to follow that, Ben. Excited.
I was going to say, I could try.
Anyone can follow that.
You want to do it?
I could try.
We got some great messages. And side note too, if it's okay with, I'll ask Marie, Jaleesa, Ben, if you're okay with it, even while we're talking, maybe I'll feature some of our chat comments on screen. And I wanted to mention that before I did it, because it could feel rude, right? It's like, oh, you're talking. Look at it. But that way we can start to, like, I would really love for some of the folks in the audience to be heard, even though we can't look at every single person on screen. But, let's just really get into this, right? Like, here's
right on.
saying, it feels hopeless. My company relied on contract work via the game industry. And that's big. I've been part of organizations that have relied on contract work, which is in lieu of employment, right? That's usually higher cost per hour, near zero commitment. And that's kind of hard to see when you're an employee, right? Because it's eating into what you could be contributing. And that's scary to see that happening. And so, Justin, I'm sorry that took place. That's not necessarily a bad business decision, but it is scary and hard when that happens. We've got one here that I think we could maybe use as a great conversation point, and that is this. Tevong mentions that today marks 1 year since I've been laid off. I wasn't in the gaming industry, but I worked in the same space. Still trying to get into it again, and it has been tough. I worked on refining my craft, rested in yes, played some games. Still haven't lost hope yet. What a terrible place for Restream to cut that comment off. It ended so well. Still haven't lost hope yet. Like, oh my gosh. Ted, thank you for sharing that and for being so vulnerable. Any thoughts?
I mean, that's great. Go ahead, Jaleesa. You go.
No, I was just saying, I relate to what you're saying. I've been wanting to work closer to gaming for the last year. I've been a gamer my whole life. I've worked in gaming adjacent industries like IGN and Twitch, but never at a place that actually made games, which was a desire of my heart. So in a similar boat, you're like, okay, what can I do to start bridging the gap? What can I do to start getting tactical training, to start learning skills? And I'm literally doing the same thing. I'm reading like crazy. I and I'm on my phone right now doing this, so I don't have a laptop because Amazon shut mine off when when the layoff happened, and I didn't have a good replacement. So I'm on my phone duking it out here until my new gaming laptop arrives tomorrow, and then I'm going to start learning Unity on Unreal. So I just want to say, with all that, honing the craft, learning skills, I don't. If it still hasn't yielded yet, I still think it will. I don't think these things come back void when we invest the time, invest the effort, and take advantage of those kinds of trainings. But yeah, and Marie, I sort of interrupted you.
No,
What would you say?
you're good. You're good. No, I was just thinking about my answer, but I'm glad that you went
Mhm.
first. But no, I think about, I mean, first off, this comment, I'm glad that you haven't lost hope, right? Like, I think that's a great takeaway, even if that's the one thing you take away from this moment and from this,
Mhm.
this talk right now is, yeah, not giving up hope, right? Like, the industry isn't over. It's just ugly right now, but it will like course correct and make itself better. But we do have to go through like the hard times, and that's just the reality, right? um but just thinking about what Jaleesa said and what Ben said too, like my advice is, yeah, do all the things that we said to do, but also like it's okay to like pick one thing and like nurture it, right? Like I think we see layoffs, we see Amir's resources, and it could be overwhelming. Like it is a great resource, absolutely. But I know some folks are like, where do I even start? Do I mentor? Do I get do I get a mentor? Do I start, reaching out to random people? Like, where do I even start with any of this stuff? And I just have to say, like, pick one thing and like go with it, and if it doesn't reap anything, then you can pivot, right? And I think that's something to be said about kind of that grind we mentioned earlier. With what Jaleesa was saying too, like you don't have to like go through this layoff and like grind right away and get burnt out, right? Like you can choose to pick one thing. You can also choose to pick a couple of things to like supplement, right? Like, okay, you know what? Today I'm just going to reach out to my first degree connections and I'm going to look at Amir's resource and I'm going to pick someone to be my mentor. Done. Like that could be what you do and just nurture that, right? So like I think there's I get it. I think there is a lot of like speediness, right? Like you need to like pick things up really quickly. I understand that people are like, I have bills to pay, I've got mouths to feed and all of that stuff. And it's true. And I know like looking for immediate employment is a real thing. But again, if we're just talking about the type of advice we can give, it's okay to pick one thing, it's okay to nurture it, and it's okay to pivot, right? If you're trying something out and it's not working, don't try it anymore, like leave that one go and then do the next thing. But I think that's kind of the amazing thing about why we're all here together is because we've all seen there's a million and one ways to get in, right? There's a million and one ways to like have that next opportunity, whatever that may be, right? Whether that is a job or it's like, hey, I just networked with somebody new, I just met someone, for the first time in this industry, X, Y, and Z. So that's my advice, is like, don't lose hope. I know it sucks right now. Definitely feel that. I'm not saying like not to like, be in your feels, like please do be in your feels. But just know, yeah, there's just a plethora of resources that you can lean on when you're ready.
Well, and how do we learn from this moment? Um,
Mm.
there are so many incredible lessons in how we got to this point, what happened. There's going to be plenty. If people still write history books, there's going to be plenty of room to explore. What happened, how COVID had an effect, though, how the overhiring had an effect, where the industry is at currently. Kind of just we're at a crossroads as an industry. Like there's a lot of change happening, and in the same vein of like when we went from a very physical industry to a very digital industry, well, now we're moving into a different era of things, and things are just a bit chaotic. And I did a post the other day about like chaos, and how do we cut through the noise, and how do we solve problems? And so, if you are the type of person that wants to solve a problem or wants to build something, like, this is an incredible time. You don't have to be that person. Not everyone's that person. But there's a lot to be learned in how do we avoid this happening again? How do we become a more sustainable industry? What are the practices that we didn't get quite right that we need to rethink? And so it's a good moment to reset that. And individually, each person can have their moment to reset it. Was the path that I was going down the one that I really wanted to go down? Because sometimes it's like, okay, maybe there's something else. Maybe I can try other things. It's just one of those opportunities to take a moment and think about it and reset. And then us as an industry, we really have to rethink how we're doing our business and how we're treating the folks in the industry, because clearly there's issues, and we need people thinking about ways to solve those issues.
So well said. So well said. One of a theme both in comments and that we've sort of started to, I think, really identify here in our conversation. I'm going to highlight a few of our comments here that are all about community. So Jeremy says, ex-Telltale Games and current Rioter here. Love seeing folks band together to talk through tough times like this. This community is amazing. Thank you. Fist bump, package heart. We've got anonymous LinkedIn user, +1 on community. Half the reason I keep coming back to this industry, which is huge. And lastly, another anonymous LinkedIn user, sending love and light to those who need it right now. Community resources are popping up daily to help support those in need. And we're all just rallying together. Not everything that people make or put out there is going to be great, but we're all doing this together is kind of how I think we go. Now, I saw a question here that I think I see a perfect Ben question. I see a perfect Marie question. I see a perfect Jaleesa question. Who would like to have their perfect question first? Ben, it is. Here we go.
I was going to say.
Ryan asked, the question is, how do we build back better after this crash?
Well, I mean, mine is, pretty biased considering what I'm trying to build, changing where games come from. Like, ultimately, we're building a lot of what we do in the industry, especially in the US. The stat prior to COVID, and there hasn't been a large study since, so that we don't really know, but 67% of the industry was in 3 states. And so, and that's changed because migration patterns have changed. If you look at 2021 and 2022 migration patterns, clearly there's been movement from some of the big cities that this has happened in. But we need to rethink about where we're doing these things, how we're investing in them. We're from a risk perspective, we're putting a lot of risk. We're like, there's a lot of people that will say that the video game industry is a boom or bust type of industry. And I would say historically, yeah, but does it have to be that? If we start to build things in other places that are more sustainable, that have better cost of living, better quality of life as well for employees, there are routes to make this more sustainable. There's an element of it that probably is a little bit more boom or bust. You need audiences. This is entertainment after all. But there are other alternative ways to do this, and we aren't exploring them enough. And so, how do we build better? I think we need to build more places. We need to try alternative methods and really think about the core business of this. Investing $50 to $100 million in a game, and if it doesn't succeed, everyone loses their job. Like, that's a really risky proposition in a business that a lot of games do fail. And so, how do we spend at the right levels, the right size teams? How are we more flexible, where we're not hiring so much just internally and really becoming this huge org? We're able to actually collaborate with smaller organizations that can also work with other organizations more so. So a lot of people are doing this, but I don't think it's prevalent enough that it's creating the larger impact that will create a better build moving forward. So I just want to see more money going to other places outside of, just where, the 67% have been traditionally in the US, and then other countries around the world as well. There's plenty of places that we can be investing more in to create a more sustainable industry.
Thank you so much, Ben and Ryan, for your question. We're going to go to Marie's perfect question. One thing I feel super compelled to mention too is, in addition to where and how, the who of who's creating, I think, is so important, because communities of color, queer community representation, like, this is a moment where there will be more new studios and more new exploratory IP than probably ever before. And if you want to be part of that, this might be the most amazing time to do that. If you're not in the industry and you want to get involved as an investor, as a producer, like, however that looks. But let's go over to Marie. This is a real recruiter question right here. This is like,
oh my,
real recruiter question.
okay, here we
This is
go.
all about perception. And so I'll put up the banner again in a second that says that opinions are not reflective of employers that we may have or will ever have. But does launching indie games help with the job search, even if it is a step down visually and quality-wise from the more AAA work I have done? I'm releasing a game in February, but I am worried that it will impact my portfolio because it isn't AAA.
That's a really great question. Thank you so much, Justin, for sharing that. Um, I do not think so. I do not think that it will, like, impede your portfolio. I don't think it's going to impact it in a negative way. I think it just continues to show that you are elevating, right? Like, you are still working on something. It's all about your skill sets, right? Like, I would rather look at somebody who said, "Hey, I got laid off and I built a game." Than, "Hey, I've been laid off and I, didn't really do much between that time." Right? Like, I think it's really about, like, yeah, like, how are you moving forward? How are you getting better? What are those skill sets? Because at the end of the day, like, I feel like that's shifting a little bit, to be perfectly honest. Yes, there's still going to be companies and studios that might be like, "I'm only looking for the AAA experience." But honestly, like, at the end of the day, like, it's making games, right? And making games is complex as hell. It doesn't matter if you're in AAA, if it's indie, if it's a cozy game. Like, I could never make a game, right? Like, I look at the complexity of it and it's crazy. And so I just feel like, if you're working on something like that, like, use that to your advantage, because those are just going to be skill sets. Like, if you have game making skills, design skills, art skills, business acumen, like, those are all going to be super important wherever you go next, right? So I would say, yeah, like, I wouldn't see it as a step down, and especially step down visually. Like, I think there's a lot of small games that are absolutely visually striking, right? Like, I've seen games that's been made by one person and I'm like, "Wow, how many people were on your team?" They're like, "No one, it was me." Like, like, those are starting to really come up and out. And so I hope you feel encouraged to do what you're doing. I think that's a great thing that you're picking up, having come down from it and experience, being on the job search and filling it in with building those skill sets. And then at the end of the day, when you also share this experience in your job search, whether that be, "Hey, I'm going to interview," all of those things, you can tell that story, right? "I got laid off and this is what I did in the middle of it. This is what I was able to create. This is how I built my skill sets. This is how I kept busy." Right? So, yes, I hope I hope that helps, but no, I don't think it's going to impact you any negatively.
Yeah, and so if we think about it, 99% of games are indie games, and it's the space I live in, and that is where innovation happens. That's where some of the most creative, unique ideas around how to approach complex problems happen, and you're able to work with small teams and move fast. And if you're able to take some of those skills, like, it can go to any different project. And indie games are just some of the most rewarding experiences. You really are able to have a lot of say. I mean, you're on a small team, So you get to really push a lot forward, and you get the rewards of that more directly as well. It's not some larger company you're working for. If your indie game hits, that's coming back to you. Now it's challenging, and make sure you get support in going through it, which is why we exist as well, because it's really hard to cut through the 14,000 games that are coming out every year on Steam alone. And so thinking through your path to release as well is really important. But I wouldn't ever look at indie as a negative thing. It's actually a hugely positive thing.
And we're seeing notes, including words like inspiring, but I want to highlight some of the indie studios here and point out a resource that most of us probably know. Let's look at some comments first, and then we'll talk about that resource. Chris, who, by the way, if you aren't able to see chat because you're on mobile or you're listening to this in your car or something, strongly recommend going back and rewatching the replay, specifically for some of the comments that Chris, Ken, and a couple of other folks who are marked as anonymous intermittently, I don't know why, are making about industry content, resources, places to look. But that resource is Eva Tucker. And Eva Tucker is probably, at this point, I believe, personally, my opinion is that her perspective is one of the most informed around opportunity and sort of career directionality in games, in indie space, that is. So really, really, EVA Tucker. Chris, thank you so much. Vampire Survivors is the most played game for me in 2023. Refine the fun, not the assets. That is my #1 watched game on Twitch, Chris. I don't know why. It's hypnotic. I love it so much. We've also got Andre highlighting the work of Lethal Company, which has some incredible products out there, including Roger pointing out Dredge and Domekeeper. Steam is the place for creative content. Very, very cool. And here we have Sarah. Don't forget to check out smaller gaming studios as well when looking for opportunities. Many wonderful small studios need talented and hardworking people. That maybe there's one that you and I, Jaleesa, can talk about too, because not long ago, actually, I think at a speakeasy in LA, when more than one person on this call was present, we were talking a little bit about how hard it is sometimes to find opportunities when you're only looking on LinkedIn, you're only looking on primary job boards. Here's the thing. So coming from Apple and Amazon, where we had essentially unlimited budgets to market jobs, you didn't really have a lot of conversation about, can we afford to advertise on LinkedIn? Can we afford to advertise on these various boards? You just did it because it was part of the cost of getting great talent. Now, a small indie studio that maybe just got funded or is bootstrapped, meaning probably funded by the founders and their resources, including their credit cards, you're probably not getting recruiter licenses, which are tens of thousands of dollars a year. You're probably not paying hundreds of dollars to post every job because you don't have those resources. And yet you have the jobs that we're talking about right now. I wish I had a perfect answer for that. And Sarah, you post great content about this all the time, by the way, Sarah Oravec. If you have anything that you'd like to add there, Sarah, please give a more informed opinion or perspective than mine. If there are aggregators out there that add to the ones that Eva and Amir have, which are really inclusive, but there could be even more. Any thoughts on that one, Jaleesa, since that's the world that you play in as well?
Yeah, I'll say, as I myself have been in the position of applying for jobs, I've gotten 2 rejections so far, both from indie studios, and both were a little bit smaller. So I commiserate with all of you who are starting that process. And I found those opportunities through, I know they might not always post on LinkedIn, but being very active on the platform helps because people know people. So the more you're posting about what you're looking for, people tend to find you and tell you about things that you didn't even know were out there. And that was the case for these 2 opportunities that I went for. Also, re-echoing what Ben said earlier about longstanding relationships, when you really invest, in your mind, thinking about what kind of studios do I like, what kind of games do I like to play? Are there certain indie studios whose work I really enjoy? and going out and starting to create relationships with those folks. Like if you're in the same city, like getting them a coffee, talking about their work, what you really enjoyed about it, and just starting a really genuine relationship with people at the ground level is a really good way to, like, when jobs come up that aren't there yet, like you're kind of first in line, so to speak. So people, you're already top of mind for folks. And so then they're like, oh yeah, like we've been talking about this. I remember, and don't be afraid to just ask, like asking ahead of time before a position is available. Like I've approached managers of teams that I really enjoy, who produce the kind of content I really like, and introducing myself and saying, hey, like if you ever have an opening on your team, I would love to talk to you about it. Just putting it out there that I'm really interested in what you do. And if you're just genteel about it and just showing your curiosity and interest, like people really respond to that, because they're like, oh, that's great. Like I didn't realize that. I remember once in college, I had to do an internship before graduating, and I delayed it, and it was almost too late for me for me to get an internship, and I needed to get it right away. Like summer was starting, my last summer before my senior year, and that was like the last I could get it. So all the good internships were taken. I was in journalism at the time, and so students were like, oh, I got a thing at NBC, or I got a thing at CBS. So they had all these big internships, and I was like, oh no, I waited too long. What do I do? And I remember, oh, there was a radio station I used to listen to growing up back in Cincinnati. Maybe there's something there. So I literally just called them on the phone and I left them a message. This was Star 93.3 in Cincinnati. I don't know if anyone even knows about that, but I left them a message and they called me back and they made up an internship for me that summer.
Wow.
So sometimes you just don't know. Like you just don't know. Don't even limit yourself to what's posted. Like go out there, be proactive, talk to people, and you'll be surprised what crops up.
Julissa, I don't know why, but I flashed to this like old timey guy with a monocle saying, "You got grit, kid."
Yeah.
When you say that, like it's got that old, like that flavor of that old school,
be creative.
Right? OG
Exactly.
networking, as it were. We are at our 8-minute mark, by the way, and we do have other things that are happening at the 3 o'clock hour, so we are going to have a hard stop. But we did have a couple of other interesting questions with answers in chat, so we're highlighting them as we were going, but I want to come back and call a couple of them out. We've got Ken mentions, if you're in a role right now and want some very low-hanging fruit ways to help, like, comment, repost people who are open to work. If you know the person, repost with comments your recommendation. If you're getting contacted by recruiters for a role you're not interested in, make sure to introduce the recruiter to somebody you know who may be a good fit if you think they should know. Having sat in a recruiter seat in one form or another for about 25 years, I will say, boy, is it great when somebody makes your job easy. And let's just say brass tacks, basic human motivation. If you make it easier for somebody, they're more likely to do it. And if it happens to be a really great person, well, that's who you're talking about. This is also a form of social proof, which is such an important thing. When somebody says to you, hey, you got to try this restaurant, you're 1,000 times more likely to try that restaurant. If you see somebody say, hey, you've got to meet Murray, you've got to meet Julissa, you've got to meet Ben, you're going to probably say, wow, okay, I guess I got to meet these people. So super powerful. And that is one version of an answer to Alejandro Kirsch's question. For those of us with time to spare, where can we help? I see a lot of time and effort put into resources like Amir Satvat's, and I wish I could use my time for others in a similar way. We just had a great idea from Ken. Anything else anyone can think of as ways to get involved, even beyond Amir's resources?
Yeah, I'll add. I mean, I would just say, yeah, like where do you want to help? Like what are areas, Ben even said, like, where are some like, problems we want to solve, right? Like what are you seeing out there? And I would also say like, not to be discouraged by any repeat stuff, right? Like, I think I've also talked to people who are like, oh, I want to put something together for the people who got, displaced at riot. But I've seen other things that are being done with that. It's like, who cares? Like, do your own thing, because you just never know where that's going to land. So, yeah, Amir has a great resource. Sometimes I'm intimidated by it too, because I'm like, it's everything. It's perfect, right? How can I even help anymore? But do what you can, right? Like, there's so much creativity, and if you have a passion for something, like, drive it, right? Like, you just never know when your help can reach someone. And honestly, like, I would not even think about it by numbers too, right? Like, even if it's just one person that you're helping, like, that means everything, right? So that's what
Maria,
I would add.
I've got one thing to tag onto that too that I just got to share here. And I can share this because I'm not compensated for this, but I work with a nonprofit called Games for Love. And we put video games into children's hospitals and then help the doctors use those video games to heal the kids. And I will say that if you want to have something that creates purpose and meaning for you, that has an unlimited amount of those things for you, in a way that also creates claimables for your resume in gaming, and you want to literally be in games and play games and come to conventions with us, this is an incredibly powerful thing. And I'd like to think that it's the kids that we're really helping, but honestly, I personally can say that I've gotten at least as much as I've given there, and I can always give more. So come and join us if you'd like to volunteer, because boy, we love what we do, and it's a great way to keep yourself motivated and connected to the community, even if it feels like it's kind of dark right now.
I think something from mine is just do something. Like it doesn't. And think about how your skill set. Like, we each have a different perspective, a different skill set. What can you do that maybe others can't? To be perfectly honest, like, I just don't have the abilities that Amir does to do some of the things that he does, and he does them so incredibly well. So I try to do it from the piece, my angle of things. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to do everything that everyone else does. You don't have to compare yourself to everybody else. And I think it's okay to just find your own path to helping others. And there's so many ways, and helping just a single person can make all the difference. And if you just focus on that, you'll end up helping a lot more people than that one person. You'll be surprised.
A ripple effect.
Marie, now you may know about a job or two, right? Do you have any thoughts about maybe a streaming service that's being really a maverick in games, or I don't know, anything like that?
It's like, no, ask Ben. Just kidding. We miss you, Ben. No, I'll just add, because I do have to jump at 3, but I'll just add, first off, thank you for having me. Like, it's so nice to be here with everybody. I'm so glad that we can come together as a community. I think it's so important that we just do this. It's good to just see everyone coming together and helping each other out and trying to form, like, we're doing it right now. Like, we're doing all the things you're asking in the chat. Like, we're finding solutions or figuring out how to, like, build better, right? So I'm glad that we're doing this. But yes, I do want to pitch Netflix Games, not a sponsor. I just work there. But Netflix Games, if nobody knows about that, Netflix does have games. Our studio is hiring a lot. And so, I highly recommend checking out our career site. I only do support the game studio. And so, of course, there's a million jobs at Netflix overall. So please go over there as well. I just want to pitch that, our studio is growing. It's doing really well. If anyone saw news yesterday about like how Q4 did, at Netflix, we've gotten, we just did really well. And so that also means like, the studio is also doing well. And so I just want to pitch that, if that's a viable place that people are interested in. I know it's very new. I do encourage looking at the post that I made just the other day. Netflix Games is new, and a lot of people don't really know the full story or like, you know, how we've come to be. We're 2 years old, so we're a baby in, you know, the games industry, but, you know, we're doing a lot of really great and fun things. And so I just want to pitch that, you know, if you're interested, please go on the career site, please apply. And yeah, and hopefully, you know, we'll be able to connect there. So.
And Marie, Netflix Games is a baby in the industry like Clifford the Big Red Dog is a puppy.
There
Like,
we go. Yeah,
massive,
and it's red.
right?
And it's red.
Let's, since we're coasting to the finish line here, we're going to highlight a couple of our comments of hopefully source of hope for some folks. Tim Wood, great insight. If you work with somebody affected, think about writing them a recommendation of their work. Frankly, just reaching out and saying, how you doing could mean a lot.
You can write a recommendation right on their LinkedIn page. Just click on the dot, drop down, give a recommendation.
Ken reminds us that it's easy to get overwhelmed by the announcements of the numbers, but try to avoid empathy fatigue. So powerful, right? Like, so true. Chris reminds us that there are more places than just like Valve and LinkedIn to look for jobs. Itch.io, Fire App Store, etc. There are some really cool places to see games and studios that are on the rise. And Ken also shares with us that there is the Game Industry Coffee Chat each morning, which apparently lives on Clubhouse. So thank you to everyone who joined to rally for our friends at ABK. Thank you so much to Marie, Jaleesa, Ben for joining on stage here and being giving of your time, your spirit, your energy. Just a reminder, everybody, there's a lot of people affected here. And as much as we say the numbers, every number is a person. And if you are hurting right now, there are resources available to you for mental health, for support, for career support. For those people who are on screen right now, and there's about 15,000 more online just in that Amir's resources alone waiting to get you back. So we're writing a different story here, y'all, and we're doing it together right now. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, y'all.
Bye all.